All right, you want to get into more extreme music, heavier music, and you don't know where to start. I've got you covered. Here are five great entry level albums to more extreme music, and this stuff is all safely on the right side of heaviness. I'm not going to show you like poppy metalcore or dad hard rock. This is still stuff that's extreme. This is stuff that's respected and a great way to introduce you to more extreme music. Number one on the list, At the Gates, Slaughter of the Soul. This is one of the greatest metal albums of any subgenre, but arguably the greatest melodic death metal album of all time. Incredibly catchy, accessible riffs, some amazing riffs on this album. That's what it's best known for. Incredible songwriting, great production. A lot of melodic death metal gets way too close to radio friendly 2000s era metalcore stuff. This album is safely on the right side of that. This album still has a ton of grit. The production has a certain level of intensity to it, so you're not getting something super polished. The vocals are more high pitched, throaty screams. So if you've had trouble getting into guttural vocals, if you tried to listen to death metal before and you don't want to listen to guttural vocals because you haven't acquired that taste yet, there's no shame in that at all. I was coming from stuff like Deftones and more hardcore punk, and I just didn't really have a taste for guttural vocals. A guy that I was friends with introduced me to this album. This is the first death metal album that I really fell in love with and really opened the door to a lot of different styles of music. Incredible album. Strongly advise checking this out. All right, number two on the list, Mastodon's Leviathan. Truly one of the best intersections of heaviness, technicality, and accessibility. This album really gives you all three of those. Some truly virtuoso riffage, some virtuoso drumming, incredible songwriting. Mastodon gets even more progressive on their next two albums, and they're even heavier on their first album, Remission. But Leviathan sits in that sweet spot where you're getting something that's crushingly heavy, something that's incredibly catchy. The opening riff of this album on the song Blood and Thunder is an iconic riff that will get stuck in your head. There's a lot of incredible songs on here, and the vocals are gruff. They're definitely delivered with an intensity, but they're not screamed to the point where you can't hear the words, and they're probably not too much for somebody who's just coming into this style of music. So if you're coming from like a background of more hard rock, this is a great primer album to get you into some heavier music. Again, great songwriting, great musicianship, and truly catchy riffs. Like they will get stuck in your head. They make you want to headbang. They make you want to move around. Amazing album. Mastodon has far more accessible, borderline radio friendly stuff that comes a little bit later in their career. I would shy away from that initially because, again, you can get trapped just listening to that kind of stuff and you won't want to come back to the more heavy stuff. So I would start with Leviathan. Awesome album. All right, number three on this list, Sepultura, their album Chaos AD. This is an awesome album if you have already been exposed to thrash music like Metallica or even Slayer. Sepultura is a little bit of a step up. Slayer and Metallica are obviously both very intense. They're great bands. Slayer in particular brings a lot of intensity. Sepultura introduces a little bit more death metal grooves, slightly more intense vocals, and on this album, it's experimenting with a little bit more hardcore punk. There's definitely more groove metal influence here, so it's definitely got a little bit of a different flavor than stuff you would get from Metallica or Slayer, but it's also a really good way to segue from that into more extreme music, into groove metal, into death metal. Sepultura, genuinely one of the best bands of all time, one of the best metal bands of all time. They have multiple classics. Chaos ID is personally my favorite. The opening song on here is incredible. Refuse Resist, Territory, legendary songs, amazing riff writing, amazing songwriting, great drumming on this album. Really interesting drumming. This album's amazing. Definitely a little bit more experimental than some other thrash that's probably more common. Great way to get into some heavier music. Awesome album. All right, number four on this list, Electric Wizard's Dopethrone. If you like stuff like Black Sabbath, even if you like stuff like Alice in Chains or Soundgarden, anything that's a little bit more blues based, Electric Wizard is a great transition into even more extreme music. This is one of, in my opinion, this is the best stoner doom metal album outside of Black Sabbath. Black Sabbath probably has the best material in that realm. This is the even heavier version, though. Some truly thick and tasty riffs. These riffs are really blown out. They're fuzzy, very bass driven, very blues driven. The vocals, again, somewhat similar to Mastodon, where they are gruff but not illegible. You can definitely hear what the vocalist is saying, but it's delivered with some pretty extreme intensity. This album is monolithic, it's huge, and again, incredibly catchy. So if you're coming from a more blues-based background, anything like Black Sabbath, Alice in Chains, grunge, stuff like that, Queens of the Stone Age, this is a great transition album to get a little bit heavier. All right, number 5 on this list, Dillinger Escape Plan, One of Us is the Killer. This is kind of an interesting choice. Dillinger Escape Plan are known for being one of the more chaotic mathcore bands. They have some extremely intricate time signatures. These guys are incredible musicians. There's a lot of jazz time signatures, some truly mind-bending guitar work on here, and it can oftentimes be dizzying. For some people, it might be a little too chaotic initially. However, this album has like legitimate crossover appeal. This album has songs that wouldn't sound out of place at all on an alternative radio station. Like there's some truly catchy, more alternative friendly songs on here. So if you're coming from alternative music, if you're coming from say Smashing Pumpkins or I don't know, Incubus or something like that, this would be a great album to transition you to the next step. There's still some really extreme vocals, some intensely screamed, throaty vocals. The vocals aren't guttural yet, so it's nothing too deep, but there's definitely delivered with a lot of intensity. But again, you have like catchy, replayable hooks, songs that you could just kind of listen to over and over again, and dispersed throughout this album are far more extreme moments. So I think this is actually a pretty good way to get you introduced to more chaotic music, stuff that comes with different time signatures, stuff that's a little bit more experimental or I guess more technical than some of the music you may have been exposed to. So an awesome way to get a little bit heavier and introduce you to mathcore and metalcore and stuff like that. All right, that is the 5. Hope you enjoy them. Check those out. Let me know if you like them. If you've heard any of these before, if you have any thoughts on these, let me know. If you're already into this kind of music, give me your suggestions on what could be on this list, and I will give you 5 more to step up from this in the next video. And if this stuff was too heavy, I have another video that's kind of like a primer for heavier music. You can check that out. Thanks for watching.